promoting dialogue.
It's 6 p.m. in Dakar and Abidjan, 7 p.m. in Lagos. Good evening. Welcome to Newslink live on West Africa, Democracy Radio 94.9 FM, and around the world at wadr.org. Here are the top stories. ASWAP fighters and families surrounded the Nigerian military in Borno State, but citizens express fear.
Integrating them into your army, you are not even sure that they are truly repentant.
Côte d'Ivoire rallies with partners to mobilize over 48 trillion CFA francs for its national development plan.
The Ivorian government is holding this meeting with a clear vision. It naturally expects strengthened support from all partners.
Senegalese government urges trade unions to postpone planned general strike. Civil society raises alarm over growing forest encroachment by illegal migrants in Liberia. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
On the news, this is Augustine Bill Coley.
Thank you for joining our broadcast. We begin in Nigeria, where the military has recorded fresh gains in the fight against insurgency in the northeast of the country. About 6 suspected fighters of the Islamic State West African province ASWAP surrounded alongside their families as troops intensified operations across Borno State and the Adamawa area. The latest operation also led to the rescue of adopted civilians, the arrest of suspected terrorist collaborators, and the recovery of weapons and logistics supplies. WDR's correspondent Yechenu Sasetu reports.
The Joint Task Force Operation Heading says 6 suspected ISWAP fighters voluntarily surrendered to troops of the 192 Battalion in Goza local government area of Borno State after fleeing terrorist enclaves in the Mandara Mountains. Military authorities say troops also rescued 2 abductees during search and rescue operations in Askira Uba local government area of Borno State and evacuated them to safety for medical care and psychosocial support. In separate operations, troops arrested suspected terrorist logistics suppliers in Borno and Adamawa states and recovered an AK-47 rifle, ammunition, cash, vehicles, medical supplies, and other materials believed to have been intended for insurgent groups. The military says the operations form part of sustained intelligence-driven offensives aimed at disrupting terrorist networks, cutting off their supply chains, and encouraging more fighters to surrender. Authorities add that all suspects are undergoing interrogation while investigations continue to identify and apprehend other members of the criminal networks. Meanwhile, the Senate's call for an end to the rehabilitation and reintegration of repentant terrorists appears to resonate with many Nigerians.
I totally agree with the decision of the Senate because even the way the rehabilitation is done is not really the proper way. Then integrating them into your army, you are not even sure that they are truly repentant.
It is a no-brainer stating that the call for an end to the so-called rehabilitation of terrorists or bandits or whatever they call them and bringing them into the society in the name of reintegration is an act of folly.
Rehabilitation should never replace justice. Anyone responsible for serious crimes should be properly investigated and held accountable.
For crying out loud, how can you rehabilitate a terrorist that has dehumanized Nigerians?
For WADR, Yechenu Sasetu in Abuja.
Ivorian authorities are continuing consultations with partners regarding the financing of the country's 2026 to 2030 National Development Plan. Abidjan, the country's economic capital, hosted the country's technical and financial partners on Wednesday as part of the consultative group dedicated to the National Development Plan. They announced financial commitments of over 47 trillion CFA francs on the first day of the meeting. Veronica Jai gives the details.
Representing the President of the Republic, Vice President Timioko Kone welcomed this strong mobilization. He reaffirmed the government's commitment to pursuing reforms aimed at improving the business climate, strengthening economic governance and consolidating partnerships with the private sector.
The Ivorian government is holding this meeting with a clear vision, structured priorities, credible reforms and transformative projects. In return, it naturally expects strengthened support from all partners, financial institutions and the private sector to ensure the full success of this new development plan.
These announcements were welcomed by key development partners. The World Bank Vice President for Western Central Africa, Ousmane Diagana, commended Côte d'Ivoire's ability to meet its commitments. Meanwhile, the president of the African Development Bank Group, Sidi Oulta, echoed this sentiment, reaffirming his institution's support for the country's development ambition.
We expect to at least triple the amounts we have mobilized for GDP. Together, let us make this consultative group the starting point for a new era of shared prosperity for Côte d'Ivoire and an inspiration for all African countries, particularly those in West and Central Africa. We will put the full strength of the bank and NAFAD at the service of this vision. Côte d'Ivoire has shown the way. The African Development Bank is proud to walk alongside it.
The overall cost of the 2026 to 2030 National Development Plan is estimated at 114,838.5 billion CFA, of which more than 80 billion is expected to be raised from the private sector. Organized with the support of the World Bank, this consultative group brings together more than 3,000 participants from 49 countries. The meeting concludes this Thursday, July 9th.
A report from Marcel Arestamblay in Abidjan, voiced by Veronique Njai. The Senegalese government is urging trade unions to postpone a general strike planned for July 10 following talks aimed at addressing workers' demands. A possible nationwide strike could disrupt key sectors of the economy, including public administration, transport, education and healthcare, while testing President Diomaye Faye's government's ability to maintain social dialogue and respond to workers' concerns. The appeal came after a nearly 6-hour meeting in Dakar between government representatives and the Trade Union Front for the Defense of Labor, which has raised concerns over unfulfilled commitments under a National Social Stability Agreement and proposed labor reforms. The government presented progress on several demands, including the payment of outstanding workers' benefits and recruitment in the public service. Union leaders acknowledged the government's proposals but are seeking further discussions before deciding on the strike action. Both sides are expected to meet again to continue negotiations. Guinea-Bissau's main opposition leader, Domingos Mao Pereira, has appeared before a military tribunal over allegations that he helped finance and organize an attempted coup in October 2025. The hearing comes as political tensions continue ahead of the country's planned return to civilian rule later this year. Imo Ede tells us more.
Domingos Simoes Pereira, leader of Guinea-Bissau's African Party for the Independence of Guinea and Cape Verde, PAIGC, has appeared before a military tribunal over allegations linked to an attempted coup in October 2025. Pereira was summoned on Wednesday and questioned by military judges after being accused of financing logistical preparations for the alleged coup with about 300 million CFA francs, roughly 450,000 euros, and organizing meetings at his residence to prepare the operation. The prosecution has requested that the PAIGC leader be placed in pre-trial detention. However, after several hours of questioning, the investigating judge allowed Pereira to return home while a decision on his legal status is pending. Pereira's lawyers have rejected the accusations, describing the case as politically motivated. They have also criticized the decision to handle the proceedings before a military tribunal rather than a civilian court, questioning the independence and impartiality of the process. The defense further alleges that the proceedings are aimed at preventing Pereira from participating in the presidential election scheduled for December, which the military authorities say will mark a return to civilian rule. The case has renewed debate over Guinea-Bissau's political transition and the role of the military in the country's governance following the 2025 coup.
Imo Ede filed that report.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Now to the Republic of Guinea, where former First Lady Haja Andre Touré has died at the age of 91. The widow of Ahmed Sékou Touré, Guinea's first president after independence, she served as the country's first lady from 1958 until her husband's death in 1984. President Mamadi Doumbouya described her death as the loss of a key figure in Guinea's national memory, praising her as a witness to the country's independence era. Born in Kankan in 1934, Haja Andre Touré remained largely out of the political spotlight during her husband's presidency, but played a prominent ceremonial role, accompanying him on official visits and receiving foreign dignitaries. Following the 1984 military coup that ended Sékou Touré's rule, she was arrested, her assets were confiscated, and she was later sentenced to forced labor before going into exile. She returned to Guinea in the 2000 and published her autobiography, My Life with Ahmed Sékou Touré, in 2023. Still in Guinea, the wife of missing pro-democracy activist Fonike Mengi and relatives of his fellow activist Biloba are renewing calls for answers 2 years after the pair disappeared. The two leaders of the National Front for the Defense of the Constitution were arrested by hooded men on July 9, 2024 and have not been seen since. While the authorities deny any involvement, their families continue to demand the truth about what happened and their safe return.
2 years without news. 2 years where I wake up every day in a half-empty bed, not knowing if he's still breathing, if he's all right, if anyone in the world still speaks to him with even a shred of humanity. Those who silenced him, they know exactly where he is today. Our children often ask me when their father will come home. I don't know what to tell them anymore. I demand his release. I am simply appealing to the Guinean authorities.
2 years that we suffer. We cannot talk about justice in this context. We have contacted the international authorities who will shed light on what happened and the culprits will be punished.
You just heard Hawadian Dukure, the wife of Fonike Mengi, and Muluku Suleiman, a relative of Biloba, speaking there. Elsewhere, Ghana has taken a major step towards reforming its criminal justice system after the Parliament passed the Community Service Bill 2026. The new law introduces community service as an alternative to imprisonment for persons convicted of specified offences. It is a move aimed at reducing overcrowding in the country's prisons while promoting rehabilitation and reintegration of offenders into society, NADEDT reports.
An act to establish a National Community Service Secretariat, provide for community service as an alternative to custodial sentencing for persons convicted of specified...
Ghana's Parliament has passed the Community Service Bill 2026, creating the legal framework for courts to impose community service instead of prison terms for eligible offenders. The law establishes a National Community Service Secretariat to supervise the program and forms part of wider reforms aimed at easing pressure on Ghana's overcrowded prisons. The Parliamentary Committee on Defense and Interior says the country's heavy dependence on custodial sentences has increased the burden on the Ghana Prison Service and raised government spending on inmate welfare and prison infrastructure. The committee believes the new law will promote rehabilitation, support the reintegration of offenders, and reserve imprisonment for cases where custodial sentences are necessary. Moving the motion for the bill's third reading, Interior Minister Mohamed Mubarak Muntaka expressed appreciation to members of Parliament for supporting the legislation and expressed hope it would be implemented successfully.
Mr. Speaker, to take the opportunity once again to thank members for all the endurance and support that has seen this bill. This has bedeviled the ministry and the country for a very long period of time, and I'm very happy that today this House has taken the opportunity to get it to the finish line. We pray that the implementation will even be smoother than all the struggle to get it passed.
Following the minister's remarks, Second Deputy Speaker of Parliament Andrew Esiama put the question and the House approved the Community Service Bill 2026.
Honourable members, the Community Service Bill 2026 is duly read the third time and pass.
For WDR, NADEDT, Accra.
You are listening to Newslink on West Africa, Democracy Radio 94.9 FM and around the world at wadr.org. Here is a reminder of our top stories. ISWAP fighters and families surrender to Nigerian military in Borno State, but citizens express fear. Côte d'Ivoire rallies with partners to mobilize over 48 trillion CFA francs for its national development plan. Senegalese government urges trade unions to postpone planned general strike. Still ahead in the news, Liberia's civil society raises alarm over growing forest encroachment by illegal migrant. We also have guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
Bringing you the facts beyond the headlines from Monrovia, Liberia. This is Abraham Parker. Stay tuned to WADR 94.9 FM Dakar.
Thank you for staying with us. We are streaming live on YouTube at WADR News and on Facebook, WADR English Service. The Confederation of Sahel States, AES, and Russia are deepening cooperation, with security remaining high on the agenda. Foreign ministers from Russia, Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali met in Niamey for the second consultative session between Moscow and the AES, building on talks first launched last year. Christopher Atijo has the details.
On the agenda were cooperation, the economy, and especially security. Russia reiterated its commitment to supporting the AES countries in their fight against insecurity. Sergei Lavrov is the Russian foreign minister.
We are united by shared understanding of the need to create a just multipolar order and by joint commitment against the neo-colonial practices that remain particularly entrenched among our Western colleagues. We hope that cooperation between Russia and the AES will further strengthen the sovereignty of our countries and expand our bilateral and multilateral ties in the format that brings us together today.
The countries of the Central Sahel say they are more than determined to move forward towards their well-defined objectives, including sovereignty and the fight against violent extremism. Bakari Yao Sangari, Nigerian Minister of Foreign Affairs, emphasized these plans.
The Confederation continues towards the objectives it has set for itself, the establishment of diverse partnerships based on mutual respect, the preservation of the interests of its populations, as well as respect for its sovereignty and its strategic choices.
During the second day of session, Russia and the AES countries primarily discussed strengthening their partnership. Karamoko Jean-Marie, Burkinabe Minister of Foreign Affairs, explains the significance of the meeting.
And during this meeting, we deem it necessary to further our reflections and ensure that the ongoing dynamics which have enabled the establishment of intergovernmental commissions which are interested in all sectors of development and which allow the governments of the ESA countries and the Russian Federation to exchange information on sectors of major interest.
At the end of their discussions, the transitional presidents of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger were officially invited by their Russian counterparts, Vladimir Putin, to the third Russia-Africa Summit, which will be held in Moscow in October 2026.
A report from Niamey's correspondent Yakuba Habibulai and presented by Christopher Atichu. In Liberia now, civil society organizations are urging the government to swiftly address a worsening environmental and security crisis across the country's forest regions. The groups warn that illegal mining, unregulated agricultural expansion, land encroachment, and the growing presence of undocumented cross-border migrants are placing unprecedented pressure on Liberia's forests. They say increasing occupation of protected and customary lands, coupled with mounting disputes over land ownership, is heightening tensions between host communities and settlers. Our Monrovia correspondent, Ephraim Parker, reports.
Environmental advocates caution that a failure to address the situation could undermine Liberia's conservation commitments and to weaken decades of progress in sustainable forest management. Head of the Secretariat of the Civil Society Palm Oil Working Group, Samson Williams, says environmental organizations and media institutions have repeatedly documented the expansion of illegal mining operations, forest encroachment, and unauthorized settlements in several parts of the country.
Particularly those reported to be entering from Burkina Faso and neighboring countries. As far back as March and April 2025, civil society organizations publicly warned about the increasing influx of undocumented migrants.
Also speaking, Deyuka Johnson, team lead of the Civil Society Independent Forest Monitors, warned that beyond environmental destruction, the situation is generating conflicts among local communities, including disputes between residents and migrants, raising concerns about public safety and national security.
Now it's been compounded by illegal mining, encroachment into protected areas. Base of it is an issue around conflicts between communities, conflicts between community members, conflicts between community members and migrants.
Liberia is home to the largest remaining portion of the Upper Guinea forest, one of the world's most significant tropical forest ecosystems. Environmental groups say safeguarding these forests is critical not only for biodiversity and climate resilience, but also for the livelihoods of thousands of Liberians who depend on them. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
Politics, analyses on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Well, regional organizations in West Africa are facing a defining moment as the Confederation of Sahel States deepens cooperation with Russia that marks its second anniversary. ECOWAS is also reflecting on its future as it seeks to build what it describes as an ECOWAS of the people. These developments come amid growing questions about regional security, integration, democratic governance, and whether West Africa's institutions are meeting the expectations of their citizens. To examine what these parallel developments mean for the future of regional cooperation, we spoke with Gilles Yabi, founder and executive director of the West Africa think tank WATI.
What we are facing now in the Sahel is not only democratic regression, it's also countries which are facing major security threats to their territory. And I think it is important for all the countries in the continent to think about ways to both build and consolidate democratic rules and at the same time build and consolidate states that are able to deliver security and social and economic benefits of populations. One of the lessons coming from the Sahel is that we need, again, to work both and at the same time, which is extremely challenging, to work on democratic construction and to work on states building as well. These are not the same thing. They are all important and they have to be done at the same time.
Let's look at public or popular support. Could it pose further challenges for ECOWAS in these countries?
It is always important to nuance the view that the military regimes in the Sahel countries enjoy massive support from the population. It is quite difficult to make a difference between the communication coming from those governments, including digital communication. We all know that there are some deliberate resources that are put in this communication to show that things are extremely moving in the good direction in the country like Burkina Faso, for example, and someone like Captain Ibrahim Traoré, seen as someone very popular in some African countries and actually mostly in English-speaking countries where people don't really know a lot about what is going on in the reality in these countries. So it is important to make a distinction between the communication about these countries and the reality on the ground. I'm not saying that these military regimes don't have important support, but I think again that it is also important to recognize that when you are in a situation where people who disagree with those governments and their orientations cannot speak without taking security risks for themselves. Of course, those that you hear are the ones who are supporting the government in place. Many people in the civil society, journalists in these countries, in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, just can't speak their mind. They can't freely express what they think about the situation. Those who can speak, those who are speaking in the media, and those who are communicating online are those, again, who just duplicate the speech and the orientation of the military government.
As both regional bodies meet with ECOWAS prioritizing its ECOWAS of the people approach, let's look at trust in these institutions. Can democracy still remain relevant, even for ECOWAS, if citizens no longer trust the institutions meant to uphold it?
No, definitely. We need to work in all our countries, not only in the Sahel countries. We need to work on rebuilding our political institutions so that we have trust between the citizens and the institution and people who lead the political institution. This work is not just, again, about democracy and about elections. Democracy is not just election. It is more than that. Democracy is more about the permanent relationship between the citizen and the institution. And we still need to work with more ambition on sophisticated institutions that deliver and that reflect also the diversity of our countries. So we have to work both on democracy, but also on the capacity of the state so that people can see the benefit of having functional democratic states.
Gilles Yabi is the founder and executive director of the West Africa think tank Wati. Now in sports, France and Morocco are competing tonight at 8 p.m. GMT in the quarterfinals of the FIFA 2026 World Cup. Beyond the stakes, this encounter will have a special flavor for many players of both selections who are alongside each other throughout the season in the biggest European clubs. Moroccans and French know each other by heart. Chadi Raid won the UEFA Conference League alongside Jean-Philippe Matita. New El Anoui and Manu Kone contributed to the beautiful season of AS Roma. The links are even more numerous in Paris Saint-Germain. Achraf Hakimi Wafan, Bradley Bakola, Desire Doué and Ousmane Dembele. The Tsar will also cross two players from Real Madrid that he has alongside, Aurelien Tchouameni and his great friend Kylian Mbappe. Hakimi will not need long video sections to prepare for this meeting. He knows perfectly the cause of Mbappe and the movements of Tchouameni. The two French also know how Hakimi can make a difference in his speed, technical quality and offensive projections, which have made him one of the strong men of the Atlas Lions since the beginning of the World Championship. This friendship between the two captains was widely commented on by the French press. Kylian Mbappe had supported Achraf Hakimi, who had been charged to have raped since February 2023. But their friendship will be put aside in this ultimate encounter at 8 p.m. tonight. And that's the latest in the world of sports. We've come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening. Many thanks to Ismaila Kamara and Umu Dayogo for the technical support. Remember to listen to us via our platform WADRL in the App Store as well as on Google Play Store. I am Augustine Curley. Good evening.
We thank you for listening to Newslink in Nigeria on Love FM Abuja and Darling FM Owerri. In the Gambia on Hot FM Banjul, Hilltop FM and Veritas Radio in Serekunda. Thank you for listening on Alternative Youth Radio Lofa County, Liberia, Radio Kegaman in Nimba County and DCN Radio Riverses County. A big thank you to Radio Baft FM in Sierra Leone for listening, and in Ghana we thank Radio Pad in Damango and Royals FM in Wenchi. Thank you all for listening to Newslink.